All right, so welcome to those of you who are joining us to our online information session, our webinar for Case Western Reserve's Masters in Bioethics and Medical Humanities. We're focusing on clinical ethics today. We're so glad that you are here with us. I'm just going to cover our agenda a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the School of Medicine, and then we'll have a discussion about clinical ethics. We'll talk a little bit about our program, cover student assistantships and financial aid, and then cover the application process and deadlines, talk about Cleveland, and leave room for Q&A. If you have questions as we are going through, or specifically at the end, we'll leave time for questions. You can submit through the Q&A feature. We'll be happy to answer those. And I will turn it over to Dr. Alicia to introduce himself first.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Jeanette. Really glad that you're Zooming in for the webinar. Hopefully this will be useful to you. The focus of this one, as Dr. Jeanette said, will be on our MA in Bioethics and Medical Humanities, but specifically the clinical ethics component, which I would say for the majority of our students is one of the big draws. So we're really excited to talk about that. I'll tell you a little bit about myself before I get into that. My background is actually in analytic philosophy. I have a PhD in analytic philosophy. Before that, I did philosophy and theology. And I actually did theology even at a graduate level. Then I decided to move on and direct my educational efforts in applied philosophy. I've done clinical bioethics for about 25 years. And I've been at Case since around 2000. I've worn the entire time a couple of hats. Even hats at a time when I had some hair back in 2000 when I came here. And the two hats really are the clinical hat, where when I was recruited to Case Western and Metro Health, I was recruited here to establish and build up a Center for Biomedical Ethics at Metro Health, which I still direct. And that was one of my really primary responsibilities. So I did ethics consultation, still do, chaired the ethics committee, was part of the privacy board, worked with nursing magnet groups as we went for magnet status, was on the IRB for some research ethics questions, did a lot of education of clinicians, health professionals at all stages, whether they were residents, fellows, early career, mid-career, late career, and really all disciplines. Then the other hat that I've worn for these many years is the academic hat. And 5 years ago, I became the Susan E. Watson Chair and Professor of Bioethics here in our department at Case. And so now, I used to be 80-20 Metro Case. Now I'm 80-20 Case Metro, but I still keep a foot in the clinical setting. And what I found for me as an academic, somebody coming from academic philosophy, is that clinical ethics has always kept me grounded. It helps me keep perspective about what matters and why, and keep my feet on the ground. And I found that for me, as an academic, certainly as somebody with a background in philosophy, and then before that theology, clinical ethics was healthy in an interesting way. So I'm definitely happy with the direction my career has gone, and really happy and honored, honestly, to be at Metro and at Case. So that's a little bit about me. And if you have any questions, about that, I'm happy to share. Dr. Jeanette, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your path?
Sure. So I have not been in clinical ethics nearly as long as you have.
It just means you're younger. Yeah.
It's true. I actually did this master's program several years ago, and kind of was my introduction to the world of bioethics and specifically clinical ethics, which ended up changing my career trajectory. So I initially came into this program thinking I'm going to get a master's degree and go to medical school, and ended up enjoying bioethics so much that I decided to study bioethics specifically and clinical ethics. So I went on and got a PhD in healthcare ethics from Duquesne University. And around the time I was finishing that degree position at Case, and Metro opened up. And so I came back here 5 years ago, which has been a wonderful experience. Spent time at Metro doing clinical ethics, learning from Dr. Alicio and others in our department, which has such a strong clinical ethics component to it, which has been great for an early career person. And have transitioned to do more educational activities. I'm now the assistant director of education within our department. Work directly with students a lot, incoming students as well as our current students. I've enjoyed so much of that. I also do work in adolescent health, in fertility preservation. So it's been, I can't believe it. It's going to be 5 years this upcoming fall. I feel like I just started, and yet it's already been 5 years.
That's how it goes.
I know it's unbelievable, but I would say I feel like Case has been such a wonderful experience and it's been a great transition from being a student and then going away and coming back as an employee. And I'm just so grateful to be here. And Sam, I will let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sam. I work in the enrollment management office. I'm losing my voice. I have a sinus infection, unfortunately. But I am here in the capacity of making sure that all the tech side is all clear and good to go. I work in serving the bioethics department and their enrollment initiatives, making sure everything is where they want it to be, and making sure that you guys get all the information that you need and help figure out if this is the right fit for you guys.
Well, thank you, Sam. Thank you, Dr. Jeanette, Leah. And we want to talk now a little bit. We've got to do some of this, right? Well, I want to tell you about the School of Medicine a bit. It's if you go with U.S. News and World Report, which is only one of many rankings, and it has its flaws, that's for sure. But as a school, we're ranked first in Ohio, 24th in the United States. But one of the things to know about Case Western, you know, we're a very strong national research institution, and you know, we have educational and research programs that are recognized nationally and globally. And I know that from anecdote and traveling, but I also know it from a variety of rankings, including U.S. News. We've got, you know, in any given year, these things change a little, but 9th ranked social work, one of the top healthcare law programs in the country, anywhere from 1 to 10. It's been, you know, in that ballpark. A doctor of nursing program. In fact, you know, different areas of nurse practitioning, including acute care nurse practitioning, was arguably, you know, pioneered here at Case Western. We have a superb nursing master's program, MBA work at Weatherhead, and then our, you know, our research in the medical school in biomedical sciences is a top 25 program as well. Go ahead, Leah. So the other thing I want to say about our strengths is that we are a really strong publishing and grant-funded research engine as an institution, as a school. And the Leiden report, which is a really important one, ranked us as the 7th top most impactful program school for publishing in the country in biomedical research, and that is a big deal. 12th in the world, by the way, which we're quite proud of that. We're top 20 in NIH research funding, and actually, depending on how you add things up, if you add Learner Research Institute resources, depending on the ranking, we're as high as 13 or 14. But definitely top 25, and a lot of really interesting, important work going on here. And one of the things we're lucky about in bioethics is that we can interface with a lot of it, because bioethics is trans, inter, and cross-disciplinary. And you'll see that in the array of faculty we have and what they do. Okay. So what's clinical ethics? I want to hear from you. Go ahead, put in the chat. What do you think clinical ethics is? You're not going to get a bad grade or anything, so don't worry about that. When you hear clinical ethics, what comes to mind? What do you think? Don't be shy. No takers? Okay, so I bet you think of things like informed consent, end-of-life decision-making, confidentiality, privacy, duty to warn, resource allocation. In the context of COVID, right? Allocation of scarce medical resource questions and ICU, right? Allocation of vaccines. Well, clinical ethics, sort of public health. Yeah, DNR, advanced directives, right? Durable power of attorney for healthcare, living will, right? These are the kind of things you think of. And you think of some sensational cases as well. I mean, if you go back, you look at the history, some of the very most public cases that people identified as bioethics cases were clinical ethics cases, whether it's from the Doe cases in the 80s or Quinlan in the 70s, or Cruzan in 90, Shivo in the early 2000s, right? All of these very visible clinical ethics cases, and shined a light really on the importance of clinical ethics and what clinical bioethics is for difficult decisions in healthcare settings or policy decisions that bear on those, right? So, all right, go ahead. Yeah. So what I want to suggest is that, bioethics, medical humanities generally, and clinical ethics in particular, have a certain kind of feature. And that feature makes work in and around these areas broadly relevant, okay? And I've got this picture up here because I gave a talk a few years ago at the University of Milan in Italy. And so I have an Italian piano and an Italian motorcycle here, and you'll see why in a second. So imagine the following happens. You got to humor me. This is a philosopher's hypothetical. Imagine that a patient's brought into the emergency department. Motorcycle accident victim, is alert and oriented, but there's serious damage to the right leg. And here's the option. The care team knows that it can take a vein out of the right wrist, put it in the right leg below the knee, save the right leg, and everything will be great, right? Well, the patient who's alert and oriented, you could say ×3 if you're a clinician. Clinicians like to say ×3, understands the options, and says, oh my gosh, well, what would happen with my wrist? Oh, you have a little disability in the wrist. And then what about my leg? What if we don't do this procedure? Well, if you don't do this procedure, we're eventually going to have to amputate the leg because you're going to lose the leg below the knee. They're below the right knee. And the patient says, oh, geez. Okay, well, whatever you do, don't touch my wrist. I understand if we get to that point that we'll have to amputate my leg. You go, well, can you make any sense of that? Well, it's a contrived case. It's a philosopher's hypothetical, although things like this do happen in clinical medicine. I've seen it. actually even cases very close to this. But what does the case illustrate? Well, gee, it turns out this motorcyclist, right, is a concert pianist, and damage to the wrist would be devastating in a way that the loss of a limb, you know, below the right knee, the right leg, would not be. So this is what the multi-talented motorcyclist cared most about, right? And you can think about surgeons or painters who might, I'm not saying they necessarily would, but who might make similar decisions. And what the case illustrates, right, is if you didn't know it was a contrived hypothetical, and I didn't have a piano and a motorcycle up here pictured, and we just kind of did a poll of the proverbial person on the street, and you said, well, what should you do? Well, you'd save the leg. And if this guy came in and he wasn't conscious, he wasn't alert, oriented, able to make decisions, and decisions had to be made, well, they probably saved the leg, right? But it turns out that when you scratch a clinical issue, you find values. Best treatment for the multi-talented motorcyclist is dependent on his values, at least in part. And what you find in bioethics and medical humanities generally is a whole constellation of value-laden issues. Okay, go ahead, Leah. So when you think about bioethics and medical humanities, what you should be considering is, oh, they look at complex value-laden issues. Where do these emerge? Well, the delivery and practice of biomedicine and the life sciences. Okay, that makes sense. We're in a school of medicine. We've got all these basic science departments. We have life science programs. Okay, complex value-laden issues. And one way of defining bioethics and medical humanities is that what we do, those of us who work in and around this area, is we work to identify, analyze, and resolve value conflicts or uncertainties that emerge in the delivery and practice of biomedicine and life sciences. That's our focus, right? And then you go, well, okay, but it's it's interdisciplinary, it's cross and trans. Well, why? Well, there's a good reason for that. When you have complex value-laden issues, you will need many different perspectives, or what you might call many different lenses, right, through which you can view the issue if you're going to identify what's at stake and how to move forward, taking into account and taking seriously certain kinds of values. Okay, go ahead, Lee. So why study bioethics and medical humanities? Fundamentally, it's because the value-laden issues interest you, you recognize that they're important, and you want to have a better appreciation of that. But you also have, you know, relevance for healthcare industry for all of us, right? I doubt there's anybody on this webinar who hasn't either directly or indirectly been involved in an end-of-life case with a loved one, a friend, a family member, a relative. We all see what science and technology can do, and that sometimes science and technology get in front of us before we've really critically thought about some of the big picture questions, some of the ethical concerns, right? So in the last month, there was a lot of discussion about, oh my God, we have a human-animal hybrid, right? Oh, geez, we've got monkey cells in a human embryo, and what are we going to do? You know, and so anyway, some really interesting questions. It wasn't really a hybrid, but it was moving in that direction. Well, should we be doing these kinds of things? Is it okay? Where should we tap the brakes, right? And then there are questions, as you've seen throughout the last year, and hopefully before even, but especially in the last 14 months with COVID, questions about justice, questions about fairness and resource allocation, access to care, right? Proportionate benefit, disproportionate burden. And all of those questions are fair game and really part of bioethics and medical humanities discourse. Okay. Good job, Dr. Jeanette. So how would bioethics, medical humanities help your career path? Well, big picture, there's broad relevance here. And because of that, whether your career path is toward one of the health professions or a PhD or the legal profession, if you're interested in value-laden issues in and around biomedicine and life sciences, then bioethics and medical humanities degree could be highly relevant. And what it might let you do, and should let you do, is carve out a bit of a niche, right? So as you'll see in a few minutes, we have MD MAs in our program. We have what's called MSSA MAs in our program. That's our MSSA is Master's of Social Science Administration, which is CASE's version of an MSW, basically, a Master's of Social Work. But you have people who will identify a niche area within a broader profession as, say, bioethics, medical humanities niche, and want to make that part of their career, right? You also have people who think, gee, I'd like to dive into this. I take a gap year before I go on to pursue a PhD or an MD or a JD or what have you. And this is a year during which I can kind of sort out my trajectory, right? Do I want to be a practitioner? Do I want to be a health professional? Am I interested mostly in more academic questions? Are the arts and humanities a draw for me? Interest in clinical ethics, you name it, right? And that's why that last bullet here, discernment for the undecided, that's also an important one. Because this is a good year to sort things out. We've had lots of students come here saying, I'm going to med school, and then halfway through go, you know what? I think I want to be a physician's assistant. Gee, I think I might want to pursue a PhD. Oh my goodness, I got into med school, but I'm really interested in health policy. We've had some folks do that. We've had quite a few. And our students are doing exceptionally well, which makes us proud and very happy. Okay, go ahead, Leah. I need the old film strip. You all are too young, no doubt, but beep, we do the beep. Okay, clinical ethics opportunities. In our program, they're robust, and they're much stronger than they are in most programs. I'm confident to say any other program, but I don't know that to be certain. Anyway, we have a clinical ethics rotation. Typically, students do 2 of those. That's 80 hours of observation in an acute care setting with, well, maybe 70, 75 in acute care setting, and then an experience of either palliative care or hospice. That's each semester. It's we try to put you at a public hospital and a private hospital. We'll talk a little more about that in a bit. But do a couple of case analyses, meet weekly with a preceptor and a small group of other students who are rotating at that institution, keep a log and a journal, and bring the things you see, the cases you see, the issues you identify to the discussion weekly as you get a breadth of experience at the institution, and then maybe dive into 1 or 2 areas that really grab you, you know, whether it's emergency medicine or burn or rehabilitation, neuro issues, neurology, neuroethics, you name it. We have coursework on top of the rotations practicum. I teach a course, Clinical Ethics Theory and Practice. I usually teach as an intensive, and it's well subscribed year in and year out, and I offer it multiple times of a year, partly because of different schedules and demand for it. But what we try to do in that course is talk about kind of some of the foundations of clinical bioethics, what you might call theoretical concerns, but also carry them over into practice. And I pull in a lot of folks who have clinical ethics as part of their academic or professional lives, right? And so we draw on folks from the clinic and the VA and Metro Health and UH and our own department here. and a broad array from early career to well-established and even, sort of sunsetting career folks, so that you can benefit from the wealth of experience and the richness of the biomedical setting here at Case Western. We also draw, you have an opportunity, fortunately, to engage with multiple clinical ethicists here, because we have clinical ethicists at each of our 4 affiliate hospitals and in our department. So as a group, we have a richness that would be hard to find anywhere else if clinical ethics is something that really, is grabbing your attention. We also have the capstone, which is, our students will call it a thesis, but it's really a 22 to 25 page research paper. But if your interest is especially in clinical ethics, then you'll work with a reader over the course of a whole semester, 1.5-hour course, to develop, review the literature, develop an outline, write the paper, get feedback, go round and round like we all do as we write, papers, especially as we try to make them better and better. But that could be on a clinical ethics topic, and we have plenty of folks here for whom that's their either a specialization or an area of competence. So that's something a lot of our students like to do. And then, of course, possible research opportunities. Those could include working with consult databases, ethics consult databases. Those could involve issues in correctional medicine. So the incarcerated population and the ethical issues that come up with care for them. Those could involve questions about ethical issues that emerge in burn practice. We have a Burn Ethics Institute at Metro, or neuroethics. We have a robust neuroethics program at the Cleveland Clinic that we collaborate with. So there are lots of opportunities in and around clinical ethics, both on the practice side and the research side.
I would just add, sometimes we don't even know we have research opportunities for students until our clinical ethicists start seeing recurring issues at the hospital system, and they're like, we need to dive into this and we need some students to help us.
That's right.
And then they're looking for students to join a project. And so those are always really exciting for students to join because it's something new to dive into.
Yeah, so the common first step is, oh my gosh, we need a lit review on this. So give an example of something that came up a few years back. Health professionals in their role as health professional at the hospital were sometimes in the position of possibly having to deliver care to a family member or loved one. Think about how challenging that would be. And we had a horrible case of a code, which is, heart stopped on an ICU, intensive care unit, medical ICU. And the nurse who responded, it was her father. And she was the first one there. And you can imagine the host of issues that raises. So we actually engaged a student to start doing some work on that. And honestly, there was hardly any work, especially on the nursing side, that had been done there. So what we ended up doing is developing some guidelines for how to handle this challenge, especially for nursing. Medicine is much clearer on this, but nursing is not. And we found out that there were different ways of handling this throughout the hospital, and not all of them were particularly good. Anyway, just to give you an example. Okay, Leah. Okay, so our 4 affiliates. So Case Western has this kind of hub and spoke model. At our best, you've got the School of Medicine as kind of the hub, and then you've got these major, amazing academic medical centers that are our affiliates. So from right to left, at least as I'm looking at it, you've got University Hospitals Cleveland Medical Center, which is, contiguous and sometimes intermixed with Case School of Medicine. I mean, you can walk from one building to the other, and you've gone from the School of Medicine to university hospitals. We've got the Louis B. Stokes VA, which is a public hospital of University Hospitals, Cleveland Medical Center is a private hospital. The VA, of course, cares for veterans, right? So you've got a different patient population, different core mission, different culture. And one of the things that's really interesting, we try to get you into a private setting like UH or the clinic, public setting like the VA or Metro, is the different cultures in those settings. Whether it's private, or public, but especially public-private, those contrasts are the most stark. But the VA is one of the largest in the country and has some amazing programs, including in collaboration with the other three institutions and Case Western School of Medicine, an amazing functional electrical stimulation program. And by the way, our biomedical engineering department was one of the featured departments in an amazing little documentary called I Am Human. So just over an hour, you can find it on the web. I strongly recommend it to you. It's an inspiring story, but it's about functional electrical stimulation work and helping a tetraplegic come to be able to move his arms again. An amazing story. We also have the Metro Health Medical Center. Case and Metro have been affiliated back to, let's see, I want to say 1917, formally into the 1850s informally, which is stunning. I mean, Case goes back, to what, 1839, 29. So goes way back. And Metro does as well. So you have this long history of research and education that came out of the Cleveland City Hospital initially, that has run straight through, Metro Health today. And all of Metro's clinic physicians, all of the VA's physicians, UH's physicians, the clinic's physicians, most of the clinic's physicians are also Case faculty. So certainly for Metro, the VA, and UH. Metro, the interesting thing about Metro, not only is it the county's safety net hospital, but it has a very active life flight program, usually 1, 2, or 3 in the country, a huge and active emergency medicine program, also one of the larger in the country. Burn unit serves the institution itself is a safety net institution, serves a large portion of the indigent population in the region, and has this, like I said, this amazing research and education history. In fact, one of the former deans of the School of Medicine, Fred Robbins, practiced medicine at Metro, and he won the Nobel Prize for doing the breakthrough work that laid the groundwork for the polio vaccine that Jonas Salk later carried forward. But the Nobel went to Fred Robbins, and the work was done at Metro and Case, which is really amazing. Another interesting Metro tidbit, which I know Metro best because I've spent the most time there and been most involved, child life, which is now all over the world. There's child life programs. Fred Robbins helped establish that with Emma Planck, and of all people, Anna Freud. Isn't that wild? Okay, there's lots of Cleveland region, Case Western, medical lore like that will just, make your pupils dilate big time, wide-eyed, and you go, wow, that's impressive. And then, of course, the Cleveland Clinic, right? Everybody, everywhere, I think, knows about the Cleveland Clinic, right? That outside of Cleveland, what is Cleveland known for? Well, the Browns, you've got that. Cleveland Clinic, LeBron, people think of LeBron, right? So Cleveland Orchestra is another, and the clinic is, as it says, world renowned, and certainly one of the best hospitals in the world, one of the 2 or 3 best in the country, with fantastic programs. And happily, all of these institutions are also strong in bioethics and clinical bioethics. So what do you get to do when you go to these? Well, you've got your clinical rotation. You have your weekly preceptor meeting. You'll do a couple of case analyses. Like I said, you'll keep a journal, a log. You'll bring cases for discussion. But what will you be out there, observing? Well, you might be shadowing a social worker, a chaplain, genetic counselor. You might sit in on a living donor advocate meeting. You might work with music therapy a little bit, the ombudsperson, attend rounds, right? Maybe an IACUC, animal research ethics meeting, institutional review board, and of course the whole array of ICUs, whether they're adult or pediatric, of course geriatric medicine, and I already said emergency departments. You name it, you're going to be able in some way or other to get a taste of it through these clinical rotations. All right, so our MA program generally, 1-year program, 30 credits, you do 15 credits each semester, you can finish it, right? Some people do it part-time and spread it over a longer time, that's okay. There are 13.5 credits in electives once you take into account the required courses, right? That's what remains. We do have our clinical rotations. Usually people do 2, as I said, 1 each semester. We have also, hopefully coming back this year as we emerge from this wretched pandemic, we will have study abroad immersion opportunities. And one of the things our department is proud of and really has a long history of is working with folks internationally, excuse me, to co-teach on a whole variety of topics. So we have courses, we'll look at them in a moment, but we've got courses with colleagues in the Netherlands and Amsterdam, in Paris, France, in Granada, Spain, and other places depending on the year. Costa Rica, we usually do a winter study abroad on health systems, comparative health system work. So there's all kinds of interesting things, and those are the study abroad short-term immersions are done over breaks, right? So it's going to either be the spring break in March, the winter break, which is December, January, or maybe what we call second spring, the May break. But that's when those are typically done, and we're hoping we can get those going again this year. You will get personalized advising, both for career and for coursework issues. I write boatloads of recommendations for students. I've done several this week already. And it's just a regular part. We have these expectations of ourselves, and we want to help you find your way, and we will. Student assistantships are available. These are basically partial tuition waivers, and they range from an eighth to a quarter, and in a very, very rare case, maybe as much as a half. And how many of those, who gets them? Well, we try to do a combination of merit and need. How many? Well, it depends on our resources in a given year, so it varies a bit, but we try to be generous with that as much as we can. Well, my chair is squeaking. This gives you a sense of what your program study would look like if you did 2 full-time semesters, if you wanted to do the program in 1 year. So we've got our core seminar each semester, which is 6 credits, Beth 401, Beth 402. This is a topical seminar with a variety of units or modules. They are headed up by faculty who are expert in those areas. It's team taught, so you have various members of our faculty, primary, secondary, and other folks that we pull in because of their expertise, who contribute to each of those units. We have an assignment for each unit, writing assignment or some sort of exercise, usually a writing assignment that is graded. Of course, there's the usual reading and out of seminar expectation, and is fairly writing intensive, fairly labor intensive, but it's a 6-credit course and typically meets Tuesday and Thursday nights for 2.5 hours. We cut it down a little bit this year because how can you Zoom? You know, you can only Zoom for so long. So we built in more out of class activity and engagement on top of just reading, right? The clinical rotations I described, you would do an elective, a couple of electives each semester, and you can pick from our internal electives like ethics and genetics, neuroethics, clinical ethics theory and practice, or you can, you know, draw from approved electives from across the university. We also have our little half kind of mini courses, 1.5 hours. These are pretty cool. We have a like bioethics and Star Trek course and some other really interesting ones. We're going to have one this fall on animal ethics that's going to be taught by, Leah may not even know this, that's going to be taught by a person who is part of the Center for Bioethics at Harvard, and she's a veterinarian, and she's going to do a 1.5 hour for us this fall on animal ethics, not just research ethics, animal ethics. It's going to be really interesting. So you get a sense of that. The second semester, yes, 2 more electives, could be the study abroad, could be from the array of internal offerings or across the university offerings, but you also have the capstone. And the capstone is the big 22 to 25 page research paper that you work on with a reader. So how do you identify a reader? Well, you'll get exposed to faculty throughout the first semester, and toward the end of the first semester, you think about topics and who you'd like to work with. Then you work it out with a faculty member. If they agree to be your capstone reader, you'll enroll in a what's called 402C with them. And work throughout the semester on that. And of course, we're coming down the home stretch right now. So students are absolutely scrambling, as our faculty, to get everything in, you know, before, under the bell. Okay, go ahead. We have a couple of concentrations. So in a way, the default is what I call the bioethics concentration with a heavy dose of clinical bioethics. We also have a concentration in medicine, society, and culture. So if you decided you wanted to emphasize this area, to be a concentrator in this area, to have this concentration, one of your first semester electives would be Foundations of Medicine, Society, and Culture. Second, you would be required to do what is a MSc, or Medicine, Society, and Culture seminar, which is really a speaker series throughout the university, and it sometimes includes a reading series. And then you would select your other electives based on, with your advisor, with input from an advisor, based on their relevance for this area of concentration, medicine, society, and culture. And yes, the monthly reading group is part of this as well. Again, across the university, we have Medicine, Society, and Culture Advisory Board drawn from every school at Case Western. The research ethics practicum, research ethics concentration, same structure, right? So you have a core course on research ethics and regulation. We have a journal club, and then you'll need to structure your select courses, structure your schedule based on courses that really fit research ethics. We also have a practicum where you replace one of the clinical ethics rotations the second semester, and you get placed with, you know, an IRB, or in a compliance office, or, I mean, it just depends, right? Research integrity questions. We have a good array of areas that are available for placement for our students, but we have to work each year to make sure that each student has a good placement, and then they spend, ideally, the entire semester in that placement. So maybe you're reviewing consent forms with an IRB. Maybe you're working with the IACUC, the Animal Research Ethics Board, or some other, like I said, one of the other areas that are in and around the regulatory and ethics apparatus for research. Capstone, I described this already a bit. So you see what the basic requirements are, study abroad. All right, it's so good to see the color and the pictures. All right, so these are examples of our study abroad courses that we've done historically. Costa Rica, Grenada, Paris, France, the Netherlands. Even local wasn't abroad, but it was like another country, Yellowstone National Park. So what are some of the things we do here? We have prep for the immersive experience, usually at least 2 meetings, longish meetings here on the Case campus, taught by our faculty. And then when we go in country, the bulk of the teaching in country is done by the collaborating faculty in that country at the collaborating institution. So it could be University of Granada, that's a bioethics and film course, which we still delivered last year virtually. 4 students stayed in it and we gutted it out, and it actually ended up being a really good course, but of course we couldn't be in Granada. Paris, France, we are revising that course, but it's had different foci over the years. A lot of them have been, for most years, it was beginning and end of life issues, French and American perspectives. So to give you one example, NICUs in France, parents don't generally make care decisions. The docs do. Isn't that interesting? And sometimes with a severely impaired newborn, a doc might come out and inform mom and dad that their baby has died or is about to die. They're sorry. And that may be the case even if the baby could be kept alive for a bit. The judgment is made by the docs. That's an interesting difference, right? The Netherlands, you have a whole different approach in the Netherlands to public health, right? So issues like prostitution, legalized drugs, drug abuse treatment, whole different approach to penal systems. We also have, and we hope we can resurrect it, pun somewhat intended, but mostly accidental, euthanasia and end of assisted dying, US Dutch comparisons, because it's quite different, right? The Costa Rica, I said, is comparative health systems. The US National Parks immersion experience was really on bioethics, the environment, and awe. So issues in environmental ethics and human health, okay? And boy, was that a great course, but we only got to run it once, and then COVID showed up. Okay, next. We do have dual degrees. You have to apply to each degree independently. So you can't just go, oh, I just saw the question, sorry. Is this a Master of Science or Arts? It's a Master of Arts, it's an MA. The dual degree, you apply to each program separately. So if it's MD, MA, you apply to Case Medical School to get into the medical school med ed program, into our program. We do also CCLCM, Cleveland Clinic Learner College of Medicine, which is underneath the umbrella of the Case School of Medicine. Those students can also do our MA program. JD MA, you apply to the law school, you apply to us. If you get into both, then, and you indicate that you're interested in the dual degree, then a decision can be made with the relevant advisors at each, in each program about your suitability for the dual degree and whether it's the right fit for you. Master's of Public Health, Master of Genetic Counseling, we have dual degrees with them. Nursing, I already mentioned the Social Science Administration, MSSA, that's an MSW equivalent. And we do have a PhD in genetics, MA in bioethics and medical humanities dual degree as well. It hasn't been utilized for a long time, but we have had students go through it. So we're happy to accept those applications as well. Financial aid, Dr. Jeanette, you want to talk about this? Give my
Sure.
voice and the interested students a break.
Sure. So I'll start actually with the second bullet point. So we have our typical financial aid office at Case. I will say our financial aid office is exceptional at Case. I can't tell you the number of times we've had students come to us and are, working through that process. And, financial aid is always a struggle. We know the cost of higher ed, and we continually refer students to our financial aid office, and they work their magic, and I don't understand it, but they always are able to come through with financing options for students. And so I always tell incoming students, please, please, please meet with financial aid, talk to them. They are the experts, they know what they're doing. So I always want to speak very highly of the financial aid office at Case. They are wonderful. But what's very unique that we offer is something called student assistantships. This is an opportunity for students to receive partial tuition waivers. And in exchange, you are given opportunities for teaching, research, or administrative assistantships. This can be anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000 in tuition waiver. That can be pretty significant for students. And so these are highly competitive. As Dr. Alicia said earlier, depending on our resources, this can depend on the number of slots we have, how much money is available in a given year. And so these are both need and or merit based. So we are currently taking applications for this. In order to be eligible to apply for student assistantships, you have to have submitted a program application. So currently, program applications to be eligible for student assistantships must be submitted by May 15th. So as long as you submit your application for the master's program by May 15th, you are eligible to submit a student assistantship application. The student assistantship applications are due June 1st. So I'll repeat that one more time. The program application to be eligible for student assistantships are due May 15th. The student assistantship application itself is due June 1st. So if you want to learn more about the tuition and fees, information is available through grad studies on the website. All right. I'll also take this slide and talk a little bit about our application process. So required materials for our completed application package include transcripts from all undergrad and grad programs. Unofficial transcripts are fine for the application process. We will review your statement of purpose. What we're really looking for is just 1 to 2 pages. And this is really your opportunity to tell us why you're interested in bioethics and medical humanities and how that fits into your career path. Or, if you're one of those students that you're not entirely sure what your career path is, how you think this program might help you discern your career path. We also ask for a CV or your resume, and then 2 letters of recommendation, including one from a faculty or professor. Once we have a completed application, it's reviewed by an admissions committee member in our department, and then there's also an interview with someone from that committee. We usually conduct this via telephone, or nowadays we can do it right on Zoom. So just to review kind of timelines, if you want to be eligible for student assistantships, you have to submit your program application by May 15th. Student assistantship deadline is June 1st. The final deadline for the master's program application to be eligible for a fall start date is August 1st. Classes actually begin in late August with orientation probably the Friday before. So I realize that it's May, but as we've seen this past year, time goes both quickly and slowly all at the same time. So one last thing before we go to questions, just want to talk a little bit about where we're located, and that's Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland's a great place to be. There's a lot going on here when we're not in pandemic times. There's a lot in terms of sports, but there's also a lot in terms of culture, food, music, art. It's a really exciting place. Students have a lot of opportunities, both within walking distance of campus, but throughout the greater Cleveland area and Northeast Ohio. One of the things that isn't even listed here is the great metro parks throughout the Cleveland area, which I thoroughly enjoy. So, if you choose to join our program and you're accepted, there's a lot of fun things to do. Students will get together and be able to do a lot of fun things. We are very much looking forward to in-person education in the fall and being able to get together and have in-person activities and classes and see people that aren't just little boxes on Zoom.
Amen. Cost of living in Cleveland is also very low, and University Circle itself is just stunning. The cultural richness of University Circle is, right up there with a handful of places, honestly, globally. Lots of folks don't know that, but it is the case, and it's a really pleasant surprise for folks who come to Case Western.
Absolutely. So we want to give those who are in attendance the opportunity to ask any other questions they may have. Please feel free to use the Q&A feature to submit any final questions. While you're typing your questions, I will add that Sam and the team at Enrollment Management have created a wonderful resource, housing guide, that can give you the layout of not only the neighborhoods in University Circle around Case and Cleveland, but also, what the cost of living looks like, what are good properties and management companies. And I am thoroughly impressed with how wonderful this housing guide is to give you a better layout of the area. And it is brand new, so it is absolutely up to date. So that is available on our website as well. I'm not seeing any questions come in.
So you can reach out to us, email the Bioethics and Case Study to you, or reach out to us individually, where you can find us on the web easily. We're pretty good about responding in timely fashion. We're all swamped right now as we come down to the end of the semester, but we're happy to be available and to engage and do our best to answer any questions you have. So thanks for popping into this, much appreciated. Thank you, Dr. Jeanette, and thank you, Sam, for the work you've done. And hopefully we'll see some of you on campus, hopefully other side of the pandemic in the fall. Okay. All right.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.